Tell you what we're going to do now and get reaction from another specialist. He's a man I've long wanted to meet. He's from Belfast, the same as me, and his name is Col Tim Collins. Now retired, of course, British officer and chairman of security services company Pinpoint Corporate Services. Col Collins, great to talk to you, and I'll tell you the reason that I so wanted to talk to you today. That speech that you made in Iraq when you were leading the Royal Irish Regiment and you were leading them into battle, you wanted to succeed in a mission, but that famous speech that you made and a reporter noted, and you said, "We go to liberate, not to conquer. We'll not fly our flags in their country. We are entering Iraq to free a people, and the only flag which will be flown in that ancient land is their own." And the reason I want your perspective is war's not pretty. You know what's involved. There are downsides. You've got to win a fight and whatever. And now we've got Russia, what they're doing, and so many reports of war crimes having been committed. What is your take on what is happening?
Well, I think Putin has got himself in a right old mess. He's got a tiger by the tail. Essentially, what we're seeing here is a Putin-inspired attack. So, for that reason, when I talk to the media or write in newspapers, I don't call them Russians. I call them Putinites, because this is not in the name of the Russian people. And he is leading an army that's most unwilling into a war that they don't want. He needs, because his criminal empire is coming to an end. He sees that, and he knows that he can't continue without having established himself with a new Russian empire behind which he can hide. And it's clearly not the will of the Russian people. So what we have is a criminal individual leading a regime. The difference between him and Stalin and Hitler is that they had an ideological underpinning to their regimes, which some of their people could adhere to. This is purely a Putin escapade. He looks in the mirror, he sees Russia. That's part of the problem. And why that's a problem is that, and he has said before that why have a world without Russia in it? What he means is, why have a world without Putin in it? So one of the dangers that we face at this point is an escalation to nuclear war. And that's why we in the West have to be very careful that we don't give him the pretense and the pretext to bring about this Armageddon that he would like to resort to if all else fails. And it will fail. And so we mustn't give him that pretext. What we've got to do is hope that the Russian people, and in particular his generals, because that's the best hope that he has, his people can't overthrow him. The oligarchs can't overthrow him. He's far too powerful for that. So the only hope is that his military eventually will grow sick of it and they will remove him.
So you think, Tim, that he would press that nuclear button? In as much as if Adolf Hitler had a nuclear button when he was in the bunker, he would have pressed it. He made it very clear that the German people had betrayed him, and for that reason they should be destroyed. If Putin is surrounded, he will take the same view. He'll believe he's been betrayed by the Russian people. But as I iterate again, this is not the will of the Russian people. These are Putinite forces. This isn't the Russians. And we can see that with the conscripts who are calling their mothers and saying, "Not in our name." So this is a very complex situation. I'd say to all the armchair generals out there, just relax a bit. Getting involved, no fly zone, any of that at this point in time would be playing entirely into his hands.
It's really interesting you say that, because, I mean, it keeps coming up on this programme. We talk about the Budapest Memorandum. So for people at home following this was when we persuaded Ukraine to give up their significant nuclear weapons and weaponry on the promise that we would defend them if they got invaded. Now, of course, they've been invaded. We're not actually defending them because of this threat that you've just outlined. And do you think it is a good justification to betray that memorandum?
Well, I think that nuclear war, which would end mankind, is probably something we want to avoid. the initial nuclear exchange would probably end up with the destruction of most of Russia, Northwest Europe and North America. It would lead to a nuclear winter. So places like Latin America and Australia that aren't hit by an initial round, life would cease there anyway because life would be impossible on Earth. So I think it's something we should avoid.
Fair enough. I mean, the scope of this conversation is it's overwhelming, really, isn't it, when we talk about nuclear war? We spoke to Major General Jonathan Shaw about an hour ago, and you mentioned it then, it could be down to the Russian army to overthrow Putin. He was suggesting that perhaps defectors could be given $100,000 to try and be persuaded to down tools. Do you think that could be one of the tactics that the West could employ?
Well, in Iraq, with the information operations we ran against the Iraqi generals, they clearly didn't see it credible because they could have removed Saddam. Anything is worth trying, but I think that the scenario that is that either his troops will down tools during this operation, hopefully that would end it, or he will succeed in taking cities, but in having taken them, he can't occupy them. General von Clausewitz, which General Shaw mentioned in his piece for the Telegraph the other day, said that winning any war is about not defeating the military, it's about bringing the people on side and creating stability. There is no way they can ever create stability because they couldn't possibly occupy all of Ukraine because it's the will of the people of Ukraine not to be occupied. The Russian soldiers who are being made on Putin's behalf to occupy it, the morale would be totally undermined, and that in itself could bring about the defeat of his regime. So the best opportunity and the best hope that he has at this point in time is realize that he's made this blunder and negotiate some form of ceasefire and peace agreement brokered probably by the Chinese. And I think that's most likely what we'll see over the next few days as they realize that this is in a mire and it's going nowhere and it's something they can't sustain. Alternatively, it may well be that his generals take over and step in at that point.
Well, that man hasn't had an ounce of the vision and the compassion you had, because I suppose you were in that Russian situation where you were invading another country. And again, just to quote from your speech, don't treat these people as refugees, for they're in their own country. Their children will be poor in years to come. They will know that the light of liberation in their lives was brought by you. That is what the Russian hierarchy would have been telling their soldiers, and it's turned out anything but. And you say, if there are casualties of war, then remember that when they woke up and got dressed in the morning, they didn't plan to die this day. Allow them dignity in death, bury them properly, mark their graves. Tim, I could go on. It was just like one of the speeches of the century. It was absolutely amazing, but full of dignity, I suppose, in a dirty situation. What should the Russians be doing differently than that they are not doing, on the basis that war has happened? We can't turn the clock back on that.
Well, in my circumstance, I was leading Free Irishmen as part of an international coalition. We were soldiers serving in the British Army. And the thing about Irishmen is that we have never had conscription in Ireland in the First World War, the Second World War. All of the hundreds of thousands of Irishmen that have served in British uniform, and including today, have done so as willing volunteers. And we go there to represent the democracy of Ireland, a free nation. And we succeed for that reason. Putin has pulled the wool over the eyes of his unfortunate soldiers and conscripts, and he has duped them, and this is not in their name. And so the best thing that people can do at this point is hope that the Russian generals and the Russian people will see this and intervene on their own behalf. What can people do? Well, there is a news blackout of Western news. Many people don't believe Western news in Russia, so go on a website, pick a restaurant near Moscow or a big city in St. Petersburg, and write a review and tell the people over their dinner what's happening and tell them it's not in their name and to protest. Get it translated in Google Translate. Tell the Russian people what is happening, because they don't know. And when they know, they will stop this, because this is not in their name.
Tim Collins, thank you so much for your insight. Privileged to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.